The meeting room was huge. It had walls that went up so high that Hyunwoo Kim had to bend his neck back to see the top. The room was on Nexus Prime, the biggest space station in the galaxy. This was where all the different alien races came to talk about important things. Captain Hyunwoo sat in a chair that was too big for him. Most things in the galaxy were made for aliens, not humans. Next to him sat Ambassador Bo-Ram Lee. She was reading her notes on her tablet. They were here for a simple trade meeting. Nothing special, just boring talk about shipping routes and tax rates. But something felt wrong. Hyunwoo had been a space captain for 15 years. He knew when trouble was coming. The aliens in the room were acting strange. They kept looking at the humans and then looking away quickly. Some were whispering to each other in their own languages. At the front of the room stood Counselor Velthar. He was from a race called the Hegemony. They looked like big lizards that walked on two legs. Velthar was young for his kind, maybe only 200 years old. His green scales shined under the bright lights. His yellow eyes kept looking at the human section. Ambassador So-Min Park sat in the front row. She was the main human representative to the Galactic Council. She had been doing this job for 10 years. So-Min was good at staying calm, even when aliens tried to make her angry. Today she looked relaxed, but Hyunwoo noticed her hands were folded tight in her lap. Behind all the important people sat Tae-Hyung-oh. He was young, maybe 25 years old. This was his first big meeting. Tae-Hyung worked in intelligence, which meant he tried to learn secrets about other races. He had studied all the old files about alien customs and wars. Right now, he was getting a bad feeling in his stomach. "The Galactic Council will now hear the hegemony proposal," said the speaker. The speaker was a floating ball of blue energy that translated all the different languages. Velthar stepped forward. His claws clicked on the metal floor. "Thank you, honored speaker. The hegemony has a simple request today." Hyunwoo noticed that all the other aliens got very quiet. Even the bug-like creatures from the Hive Collective stopped their clicking sounds. That was strange, those bugs never stopped making noise. "We want the Kepler 442 system," Velthar said. His voice was loud and rough. "Both the hegemony and the Human Federation claim this system. We have argued about it for 3 years. Today we will end this argument." So-Min stood up slowly. "The Human Federation is ready to discuss a fair solution. Perhaps we can share the system's resources." "No," Velthar said. His tail hit the floor with a loud bang. "The hegemony challenges the Human Federation to single combat. Our champion against yours. The winner takes the entire system." The room became dead silent. Hyunwoo felt his heart beat faster. He looked around and saw that many aliens were already getting up to leave. The tall gray creatures called Veltorians were moving toward the exits. They looked scared. Tae-Hyung felt sick. He remembered reading about this in the old files. There were warnings, written by aliens who had fought alongside humans in past wars. The warnings all said the same thing. Never challenge the humans to a fight. They do not fight like other races. They fight to win, no matter what it costs. But Velthar was too young to remember those wars. His race had won 12 star systems by challenging other races to single combat. Their champions were huge and strong. They had never lost a fight. Velthar thought humans would be easy to beat. So-Min looked at Velthar for a long moment. Her face showed no emotion. "The Human Federation accepts your challenge. Our champion will be ready in 7 days." "Excellent." Velthar's mouth opened, showing all his sharp teeth. "The combat will follow ancient laws, melee weapons only. Fight until one champion can no longer continue. The winning race takes the Kepler 442 system." "Agreed," So-Min said. The meeting ended quickly after that. Aliens rushed to get out of the room. Hyunwoo watched them go and noticed something interesting. The aliens fell into 2 groups. The young ones looked excited. They wanted to watch the humans get beaten. But the older aliens looked worried. Very worried. An ancient creature approached So-Min as she gathered her papers. It was a Korthak, one of the oldest races in the galaxy. This one was very old even for his kind. His skin was gray and wrinkled. He moved slowly with the help of a walking stick. "Ambassador Park," the old Korthak said. His voice was like dry leaves. "May I speak with you?" "Of course, Elder," So-Min said with respect. "That young fool does not know what he has done." The Korthak whispered. "I was alive during the border wars. I saw what happens when humans are forced to fight. Please tell your people to be careful. The galaxy is not ready to see humans at war again." So-Min nodded. "Thank you for your concern. Elder, we will handle this situation carefully." The old alien hobbled away, shaking his head. Tae-hyung came up to So-Min. "Ambassador, should I send a message to Earth Command?" "Yes," So-Min said. "Send a priority message. Tell them we have accepted a formal combat challenge. Use Protocol 7 authorization." Tae-hyung's eyes went wide. Protocol 7 was something he had only read about in classified files. It had not been used for 40 years. As the humans left the meeting room, Bo-Ram walked next to Hyun-woo. "Do you think we made the right choice?" she asked quietly. Hyun-woo looked back at the empty room. "The hegemony thinks they just challenged us to a simple fight. They have no idea what they actually did." "What do you mean?" "They just declared war on humanity. They just don't know it yet." On the other side of the station, Velthar was celebrating with his advisors. They were drinking strong alien alcohol and laughing about how easy it would be to crush the small humans. "Their champion will probably be some weak scientist," one advisor said. "Our champion Gorthak will end this in minutes." "The humans have gotten soft," another said. "They spend too much time on diplomacy and trade. They have forgotten how to fight." Velthar raised his glass. "To an easy victory and a new star system for the hegemony." They drank and laughed. None of them noticed the small listening device that Tae-hyung had placed under their table earlier that day. Back on the human ship, Hyun-woo sat in his captain's chair. His communications officer handed him a message tablet. "Priority message from Earth Command, sir," she said. Hyun-woo read the message. It was very short. "Challenge acknowledged. Champion selected. Fleet assets moving to position. Estimated time to resolve situation 72 hours. Hyun-woo smiled for the first time that day. 72 hours. Earth Command was being generous. Based on what he knew about human military capabilities, this would probably be over much sooner than that. The hegemony had made a terrible mistake. They thought they were challenging humans to an honorable duel. What they had actually done was wake up something that the galaxy had hoped would stay sleeping forever. In 3 days, Velthar would learn why there was an old rule that every smart race in the galaxy followed. Do not challenge the humans. Admiral Minho Choi was drinking his morning coffee when the message arrived. He was on his flagship, the Soul's Vengeance, patrolling the quiet space near the outer rim. These patrols were usually boring. Pirates sometimes tried to attack cargo ships, but they ran away when they saw military vessels. The message came through the secure communication system. It was encrypted with the highest level of security codes. Minho read it twice to make sure he understood correctly. Challenge accepted. Prepare for Protocol 7. Minho set down his coffee cup. His hands did not shake, but his mind was racing. Protocol 7 had not been used since the Wraith incursion 40 years ago. He had been a young lieutenant then. He remembered what happened when humanity went to full war mode. "Communications," he called to his bridge crew. "Send coded message to all fleet commanders. Priority Alpha, use the old channels." "Yes, sir," came the reply. Within minutes, messages were flying across human space. They did not use the normal communication networks that other aliens could monitor. Instead, they used secret channels that had been built over many years. The messages were short and simple, but every human military officer knew what they meant. On Terra Nova, Ji Young-han was working in her machine shop. She made and fixed combat suits for mining workers. The work was peaceful, and she liked it. But then her old military communicator beeped. She had not heard that sound for 5 years. The message was simple. "Report to Luna Base 7. Bring everything." Ji Young looked at her workshop. She had been building more than just mining equipment. In her secret room, she had been working on new combat armor designs just in case. Humans always planned for just in case. She started packing immediately. Dr. Seung-ho Yoon was teaching his students about alien biology. He was explaining how different species fought and why humans were different from other races. His students thought it was just academic discussion. They did not know their professor had once been a military scientist. His communicator buzzed during class. He looked at the message and his face became serious. "Class is dismissed," he said quietly. "Study chapters 12 through 15 for next week." His students left, confused by their professor's sudden change in mood. Seung-ho sat alone in his classroom, staring at the recall message. He had hoped never to use his wartime knowledge again. But duty was duty. Da-eun Kim was working in her garden on New Seoul Colony. She grew vegetables and flowers. It was quiet, work that helped her forget about the war. Her old armor hung in a closet, gathering dust. She had not worn it for 8 years. When the message came, she was planting tomatoes. Her hand went automatically to her throat, where an old scar reminded her of her last battle. She had nearly died fighting the Centauri rebels. The doctor said she was lucky to survive. She looked at her peaceful garden, then at the message. With a sigh, she went to get her armor. Across the galaxy, the hegemony was preparing for their easy victory. They moved their third armada into the Kepler 442 system. 237 ships, including massive battleships that could destroy entire moons. It was the largest military force they had ever assembled. Velthar stood on the bridge of his command ship looking at the tactical display. "Look at this power," he told his officers. "The humans have nothing like this. Their largest ship is half the size of our smallest battleship." What Velthar did not know was that humans had been watching the Kepler 442 system for 3 years. Hidden observation posts sat in asteroid fields and inside gas cloud formations. They looked like space junk, but they were actually advanced monitoring stations. Woojin Park ran the intelligence center on Luna Base 7. His job was to watch alien military movements and predict what they might do. For 3 years, he had been studying hegemony tactics. He knew their battle formations better than some of their own officers. "Sir," one of his analysts said, "the hegemony Third Armada has taken position in the outer system. They're using formation Delta 7. Woojin smiled. "Of course they are. It's their favorite formation for intimidating smaller forces." He turned to his team. "Send the data to strategic planning. Tell them the enemy is doing exactly what we expected." Young-Soo Lee worked in strategic planning. His office was deep underground, protected by layers of armor and defensive systems. On his screens, he could see the positions of every ship in the Kepler system. The hegemony ships glowed red. They thought they were hidden, but human sensors could see everything. "They brought everything," Young-Soo said to his assistant. "Their entire Third Armada, exactly as predicted." "Should we be worried, sir?" the assistant asked. "That's a lot of firepower." Young-Soo looked at another screen that showed human ship positions. Most of the icons were dark, representing ships that were running silent and invisible to enemy. "Sensors." "No," Young-Soo said calmly. "We should not be worried. The hegemony had made their battle plan simple. They would overwhelm any human force with superior numbers and firepower. Their ships had thicker armor and bigger guns. Their plan was to line up and blast the humans into space dust. But they were planning to fight humans the way they had fought everyone else. They did not understand that humans did not fight fair. Humans fought to win. In hidden bases throughout human space, people were getting ready. Engineers checked weapons that had been stored for years. Pilots ran training simulations for ships that officially did not exist. Scientists prepared equipment that most aliens had never imagined. Captain Hyejin Lim was on Earth, in a briefing room buried under the Korean mountains. She was listening to the final battle plan. Around the table sat the best military minds humanity had ever produced. "The enemy thinks this is about honor," the general was saying. "They think they can intimidate us with big ships and loud threats. They are wrong. The plan was complex, but the goal was simple: complete victory. Not just winning the combat challenge, but sending a message to every alien race in the galaxy. A message that said humans were not to be trifled with." "What about civilian casualties?" one officer asked. "There will be none," the general replied. All civilian stations and ships have been evacuated from the system. The hegemony made sure of that when they moved their fleet in. They wanted to intimidate everyone, so they told all civilians to leave. Hyejin smiled. The hegemony had done half of humanity's work for them. Meanwhile, in the Kepler system, other alien races were running away as fast as they could. The trade stations that had operated there for decades were suddenly empty. Research ships that had been studying the system's planets packed up and left. The smart aliens remembered the old warnings. They knew what happened when humans fought seriously. They did not want to be anywhere nearby when it started. But some aliens stayed to watch from a safe distance. They wanted to see the humans get destroyed. They thought it would be entertaining. Il-sung Ryu commanded a human stealth ship called the Busan Shadow. His ship was completely invisible to enemy sensors. He had been hiding in the system for 2 weeks, watching the hegemony prepare for battle. "Sir," his sensor officer reported, "alien observation ships are taking position at the system edge. Looks like they want to watch the show." Il-sung nodded. "Let them watch. They'll learn something today." The hegemony's champion, Gorthak the Undefeated, was also preparing. He stood 3 meters tall and weighed as much as a small vehicle. His natural armor could stop bullets. His claws could cut through steel. He had won 47 single combats and had never been seriously injured. Gorthak was practicing his moves on the combat deck of the hegemony flagship. Each punch could break bones. Each kick could crush armor. He was looking forward to fighting the small human champion. "What do we know about their champion?" he asked his trainer. "Very little," the trainer replied. "Humans keep their military records secret. But how dangerous can they be? The biggest human we have seen is barely 2 meters tall." Gorthak laughed, a sound like rocks falling down a mountain. "This will be over quickly," but on Luna Base 7, humanity's champion was also preparing. Jin Song sat quietly in a meditation room, her mind focused and calm. She was small compared to Gorthak, but size was not everything in combat. Jinny had studied every recording of hegemony combat techniques. She knew exactly how Gorthak would attack and exactly how she would respond. The outcome was not in doubt. It never had been. The stage was set. The actors were in position. In less than 24 hours, the galaxy would remember why challenging humans was a very bad idea. The arena was built on the largest moon of Kepler 442b. It was a simple circle made of metal, about 50 meters across. Around it was an energy barrier that would keep the fighters inside and protect the audience from getting hurt. The moon had no air, so everyone wore spacesuits except for the fighters, who would be inside the energy barrier where air was provided. Ships from many different alien races floated in space around the moon. They had come to watch what they thought would be an easy victory for the hegemony. The betting odds strongly favored Gorthak the Undefeated. Most aliens had bet against the humans. Gorthak stood at one end of the arena. He was huge, even by hegemony standards. His green scales were polished until they shined like metal. His claws were sharp enough to cut through armor. He wore no protection because his natural skin was armor. His yellow eyes glowed with confidence. At the other end of the arena stood Jin Song. She was 1.7 meters tall and weighed 68 kilograms. Next to Gorthak, she looked like a child. She wore simple black combat clothes and carried only a small knife. Her face was calm and her breathing was steady. She looked like she was waiting for a bus, not preparing to fight a monster. The hegemony. Delegates were laughing and joking in their observation booth. This was going to be so easy that it was almost boring. Their champion would crush this tiny human in seconds. But in the human observation area, nobody was laughing. Donghyun Park watched through the armored glass with intense focus. He was Jin's combat coordinator, and he had trained her for this moment for 2 years. Next to him, Soo-jin Kim monitored Jin's vital signs on her medical equipment. Jin's heart rate was perfectly calm, like she was taking a peaceful walk. Jae-min-oh sat nearby, watching the betting displays from around the galaxy. Aliens were betting huge amounts of money against the humans. Some races were betting their entire treasury. So sure were they that Gorthak would win. Final odds are 847 to 1 against us. Jaemin reported quietly. Good, Dong-hyun replied. Let them keep their illusions a little longer. The referee was a floating robot that spoke all galactic languages. Combat will begin when the tone sounds. Victory conditions. One fighter unable to continue combat. Weapons restricted to melee only. Fighters prepare for combat. Gorthak began his traditional war dance. He roared so loudly that the sound made the arena floor vibrate. He beat his chest with his massive fists and showed off his claws. This display was meant to make enemies surrender before the fight even started. It had worked 47 times before. Jeannie just stood there watching. Her expression did not change. She did not look afraid or impressed. She looked like someone studying an interesting problem that she already knew how to solve. The tone sounded. Gorthak charged immediately. This was his favorite tactic. Rush the enemy and end the fight with one massive attack. His claws were extended, ready to slash his opponent in half. He had done this exact same move 47 times. It always worked. But Jin'e was not where she was supposed to be. Every other opponent had tried to dodge backward or to the side. They had all been too slow. But Jin'e moved forward, not away. She slipped under Gorthak's guard like water flowing around a rock. Suddenly she was close to him, closer than any opponent had ever gotten during his opening charge. What happened next took 3 seconds. Jin'e's combat knife found the one weak spot in Gorthak's natural armor. Every species had weak points, and humans had studied hegemony anatomy for years. Between the chest plates and shoulder armor was a small gap, barely 2 centimeters wide. No previous opponent had been fast enough or skilled enough to hit such a tiny target. Jin'e was. The knife slid between the scales and found the major artery that fed Gorthak's right arm. The cut was precise and surgical. Gorthak's arm went numb immediately and he began bleeding heavily, but Jin'e was not finished. As Gorthak stumbled from the unexpected wound, she moved again. Her second strike hit the nerve cluster behind his left knee. Gorthak's leg collapsed, and he fell to the arena floor with a crash that shook the entire platform. The third strike was to the base of his skull, where the spine met the brain. Jin'e did not kill him. The knife was placed perfectly to cause unconsciousness without permanent damage. Gorthak, the undefeated, fell face first onto the metal floor and did not move. The entire arena was silent. Nobody could believe what they had just seen. The greatest champion in hegemony history had been defeated in 3 seconds by someone who looked like she should be working in an office, not fighting in an arena. Changmin Kwok, serving as humanity's combat referee, walked onto the arena floor. He checked Gorthak's vital signs and confirmed that he was unconscious but alive. Then he spoke the traditional words that ended a combat challenge. Combat concluded. Victory to the Human Federation. The silence stretched on. Then alien voices began talking all at once. The betting computers crashed as they tried to calculate payouts that nobody had expected. The hegemony delegates sat in shock, staring at their defeated champion. But Velthar was not ready to accept defeat. According to ancient galactic law, the losing side could demand escalation. Instead of single combat, they could challenge the winning side to fleet combat. It was a dangerous option because the stakes were much higher, but Velthar was young and proud and angry. He stood up in his booth and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. The hegemony demands trial by fire. Fleet against fleet, winner takes all. Now the human delegates looked at each other and smiled. This was exactly what they had been hoping for. Hye-Jin Lim, the diplomatic corps' military liaison, activated her communication device. She spoke quietly, but her words were heard by military commanders across human space. Admiral Choi, they took the bait. In the arena, Jin'e was walking back to the human observation area. She had cleaned her knife and put it away. Her vital signs were still perfectly calm. She looked like she had just finished a light exercise routine, not defeated the most dangerous fighter in the galaxy. How do you feel? Sujin Kim asked as Jin'e sat down. Fine, Jin'e replied. He fought exactly like the training simulations predicted. No surprises. Dong-hyun was watching the hegemony booth through high-powered telescopes. Velthar is calling. For fleet combat. He's demanding trial by fire. Perfect, Jin'e said. Phase 1 complete. The alien observers were beginning to understand that something was very wrong. The smart ones were already starting their engines and preparing to leave. The system. They remembered the old warnings about challenging humans. They remembered what happened when humans fought seriously. But many aliens stayed to watch. They wanted to see the fleet battle. The hegemony had over 200 ships in the system. Surely they could defeat whatever small force the humans brought. They had no idea that human ships had been hiding in the system for weeks. They had no idea that this entire situation had been planned from the beginning. They had no idea that the humans had been hoping for exactly this challenge. Admiral Min-Ho Choi received the message on his flagship. The Soul's Vengeance was hiding, in the shadow of a large asteroid, completely invisible to enemy sensors. Around him, the rest of his fleet waited in perfect silence. All ships, this is Admiral Choi, he said into his communicator. The enemy has requested trial by fire. They want to escalate to fleet combat. Execute Operation Hammerfall. Across the system, human ships began to move. But they did not move like other fleets. They moved like a pack of hunters who had been watching their prey for a very long time. The hegemony thought they had just challenged a small human force to honorable fleet combat. What they had actually done was spring a trap that had been 3 years in the making. Velthar was about to learn that humans had 2 ways of fighting. The first way was the kind they had just seen in the arena, quick, precise, and surgical. The second way was what happened when humans stopped holding back. The hegemony was about to see the second way, and once they saw it, those who survived would never forget it. The hegemony Third Armada was spread across the Kepler 442 system like a steel wall. 237 ships arranged in perfect formation. Massive battleships floated in the center, surrounded by cruisers and destroyers. It was the most powerful military force that most aliens had ever seen. Admiral Velthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator. Through the viewing windows, he could see his mighty fleet stretching out in all directions. Each ship was larger and more heavily armed than anything the humans possessed. His confidence was returning after the shameful defeat in the arena. "Where are the human ships?" he asked his sensor officer. "Unknown, sir. We detect no human military vessels in the system." Velthar's mouth opened in what his species considered a smile. "They are probably still gathering their forces. Humans are weak. They will need time to find enough ships to face us." What Velthar did not know was that human ships had been in the system for weeks. They were just very good at hiding. Admiral Min-Ho Choi watched the enemy formation from his command center. The Soul's Vengeance was tucked behind a large asteroid, invisible to all sensors. Around him, his officers worked quietly at their stations. Everyone spoke in whispers, as if making noise might give away their position. "Enemy fleet analysis complete," reported Kyung-Soo Nam, his tactical coordinator. "They're using the Calyx Doctrine formation, textbook deployment." Min-Ho nodded. Humans had studied the Calyx Doctrine for 20 years. It was a good formation for fighting other aliens who followed similar tactics. It was terrible for fighting humans who ignored all the rules. "Signal all hidden assets," Min-Ho ordered. "Begin Phase 2. Lieutenant Yoonji Bae was at the sensor station. Her equipment was much more advanced than anything the hegemony possessed. She could see every ship in their fleet, track their movements, and even monitor their communications. "Sir, the enemy is moving into attack formation. They expect us to approach from the outer system." "Of course they do," Min-Ho said calmly. "That's what all the textbooks say to do. Signal the ghost ships. Time to give our guests a surprise." Hidden. Throughout the system were ships that officially did not exist. The Ghost Fleet had been built in secret over many years. They used technology that was decades ahead of anything other races possessed. Most importantly, they could become completely invisible. Captain Il-sung Ryu commanded the stealth destroyer Busan's Shadow. His ship had been hiding inside a nebula cloud for 2 weeks. The cloud provided perfect cover, and the ship's stealth systems made it impossible to detect even if someone looked directly at it. "All stealth ships, this is Shadow Leader," Il-sung spoke into his communicator. "Execute Wraith Protocol." Around the system, 24 stealth ships became active. They had been hiding in asteroid fields, gas clouds, and even inside the shadows of planets. Now they began to move, sliding through space like invisible knives. The hegemony fleet continued its approach, confident and proud. They had no idea they were being surrounded. On the carrier Incheon's Pride, fighter pilot Haiwan Cha was strapping herself into her combat suit. Her fighter was unlike anything other races had built. It was small, fast, and packed with weapons that could destroy ships 10 times its size. "All pilots prepare for launch," came the announcement. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Haiwan had trained for this moment her entire career. She knew exactly what her squadron was supposed to do. They would hit the enemy fleet like a swarm of angry wasps, striking fast and disappearing before the enemy could respond. But the real surprise was hidden throughout the system itself. For 3 years, human engineers had been placing automated weapon platforms in carefully chosen locations. They were disguised as space debris, asteroids, and even old satellites. The hegemony had flown right past them without noticing. Dong-wook. Shin coordinated the trap from his command bunker on the system's third planet. His screen showed the positions of over 300 hidden weapon platforms. Each one was armed with missiles and energy weapons powerful enough to destroy a battleship. "Platform status report," he called to his team. "All platforms online and ready," reported Young Min-yu. "Target acquisition in progress." "Enemy fleet is entering the kill zone," added Su-young Jang from her weapons coordination station. The hegemony fleet was now completely surrounded, though they did not know it. They had walked into a web that had been woven around them before they ever arrived. "All units, this is Admiral Choi," came the voice over the communication system. "The enemy is in position. Execute Operation Hammerfall." What happened next would be remembered as the fastest fleet battle in galactic history. The hidden weapon platforms activated simultaneously. Over 300 guns opened fire at exactly the same moment. The platforms had been tracking the hegemony ships for hours, calculating perfect firing solutions. When they fired, every shot hit its target. The stealth ships attacked at the same time. 24 invisible destroyers launched missiles from point-blank range. The hegemony ships had no warning, no time to raise shields or take evasive action. Fighter squadrons poured out of hidden carriers like clouds of deadly insects. They swarmed through the enemy formation, striking at weak points that human intelligence had identified years ago. But the most devastating attack came from the Soul's vengeance itself. Admiral Minho's flagship emerged from behind its asteroid hiding place and fired a weapon that no other race possessed. The plasma lance beam cut through 3 hegemony battleships in a single shot. The hegemony fleet tried to respond, but they were confused and panicked. Their perfect formation fell apart as ships tried to find enemies they could not see. They fired wildly in all directions, often hitting their own vessels by mistake. "Report!" Velthar screamed on his bridge as explosions lit up the space around him. "Unknown contacts on all sides," his sensor officer replied. "We're taking fire from everywhere." "How many human ships are there?" "I don't know, sir. Our sensors can't track them." The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, the hegemony Third Armada no longer existed. Some ships had been destroyed outright. Others were drifting helplessly with their engines and weapons destroyed. A few had managed to surrender before being blown apart. Admiral Minho stood on his bridge, watching the wreckage floating in space. His fleet had not lost a single ship. Not one human had been killed or even seriously injured. "Sir," Yunji reported, from her sensor station, "we're detecting incoming ships at the system edge. Long-range scanners show..." "Oh my." "What is it, Lieutenant?" "Sir, it's the entire hegemony fleet, not just the Third Armada. Everything they have. Over 1,000 ships." Minho smiled. This was exactly what they had been hoping for. The destruction of the Third Armada had been broadcast across the galaxy. Every alien race had watched in horror as the most powerful military force they knew was destroyed in minutes by an enemy they could barely see. But the hegemony leadership was too proud and too angry to accept defeat. They had sent every ship they possessed to avenge their honor. It was the largest military force assembled in galactic history. "Admiral," Kyung-soo said quietly, "they're really bringing everything." "Good," Minho replied. "Signal Earth Command. Tell them the enemy has committed all their forces. Request permission to proceed with Operation Clean Sweep. The response came back immediately. Permission granted. Show them what happens when someone threatens humanity. Minho turned to his communications officer. Send a message to all human forces throughout the galaxy. Execute Protocol 7, full authorization, take the gloves off. The message that went out was simple, but every human military commander knew what it meant. For 40 years, humanity had been holding back, pretending to be a peaceful race that only wanted to trade and explore. That pretense was now over. The hegemony thought they had just committed their entire fleet to crush a small human force. What they had actually done was give humanity permission to show the galaxy what they were really capable of, and the galaxy was about to learn why. There was an old rule that smart species followed: never challenge the humans. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. Representatives from hundreds of different species crowded into the great chamber on Nexus Prime. They were all talking at once, their voices mixing into a chaos of fear and confusion. The reports coming in from across the galaxy were impossible to believe. The hegemony's war fleet, over 1,000 ships, the largest military force ever assembled, had simply vanished. Not defeated in battle, not retreating in disorder. Vanished completely as if it had never existed. Siwoo Park stood at the human representative podium. He was calm and composed, exactly like his predecessor Somin had been. But now the other delegates looked at him very differently. Before, they had seen humans as weak traders who were useful but harmless. Now they were not sure what humans were. The Human Federation regrets that the hegemony chose to escalate a simple challenge into total warfare, Siwoo said in a clear, steady voice. However, we will not allow unprovoked aggression against our territory or our citizens. What did you do to them? Screamed the Veltorian delegate. Where are their ships? Siwoo looked at the alien with no expression on his face. The hegemony declared war on humanity. We defended ourselves. But how? Asked another delegate. They had over 1,000 ships. Yes, Siwoo agreed. They did. What the Galactic Council did not know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment since they first made contact with alien races. Every trade mission, every diplomatic meeting, every cultural exchange had been gathering information, learning about alien technology, tactics, and weaknesses, mapping the locations of every military base and fleet. For 50 years, humans had been smiling and trading and acting peaceful while secretly preparing for war. Deep beneath the surface of Luna, Yeonsu Kim directed operations from the most secure bunker in human space. Her screens showed the positions of human assets across the entire galaxy, assets that most alien species never knew existed. Status report, she called to her staff. Ghost fleet units have reached all primary targets, reported one officer. Hegemony home system is surrounded. Stealth assets are in position at all. Secondary objectives, Gori said another. We have eyes on every major alien military installation. Phase 3 is ready to execute on your command, added a third. Yeonsu nodded. Phase 3 was the demonstration that would end this war and prevent any future challenges to humanity. The Ghost Fleet was humanity's most secret weapon. 100 ships that officially did not exist, built in hidden shipyards using technology that was decades ahead of anything other races possessed. They could travel faster than any known ship, remain invisible to all sensors, and strike with devastating precision. Captain Gunwoo Lee commanded the flagship of the Ghost Fleet, a vessel called Silent Thunder. His ship was currently in orbit, around the hegemony homeworld, completely invisible to the planet's defense systems. All Ghost Fleet units report status. Gunwoo spoke into his communicator. One by one, his captains reported in. The entire hegemony empire was surrounded. Every planet, every space station, every military installation was being watched by invisible human ships. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 different hegemony worlds. Their local leaders want to negotiate. Tell them to contact their supreme commander, Gunwoo replied. We only negotiate with the top. On the hegemony capital world, panic was spreading. Their mighty fleet had left to crush the humans and had never returned. No messages, no survivors, no wreckage, just silence. Supreme Commander Vexnoth sat in his command center, surrounded by advisors who had no advice to give. The screens that should have shown his fleet positions were dark. The communication channels that should have carried reports from his ships were silent. Options? He asked his staff. We could mobilize the planetary defense fleets, suggested one advisor. With what? Vexnoth snapped. We sent everything to the human system. There's nothing left. We could ask other races for help, said another. What other races? They are all hiding in their home systems, afraid they will be next. It was true. Across the galaxy, alien races were pulling back their fleets and preparing their defenses. Nobody wanted to be the next species to face whatever had destroyed the hegemony armada. The message that ended the war was delivered personally to Vexnoth by Yongjin-O, humanity's military advisor. He appeared in the hegemony command center without warning, having walked past all their security systems as if they did not exist. Supreme Commander, Yongjin said politely, I bring a message from the Human Federation. Vexnoth stared at the human in shock. How did you get in here? This facility is completely secure. Nothing is secure from humans when we choose not to respect it, Yongjin replied calmly. Now, shall we discuss terms? The terms were simple and non-negotiable. Complete surrender of all hegemony military assets, withdrawal from all disputed territories, payment of reparations for the cost of the war they had started, and most importantly, acknowledgement that they had been completely defeated by a superior force. Your fleets are gone, Yongjin explained. Your home world is surrounded by ships you cannot see. Your military installations are targeted by weapons you cannot detect. You have exactly one choice. Surrender unconditionally, or watch your entire civilization disappear. Vexnoth looked at his advisors, but they had nothing to offer. The truth was obvious to everyone in the room. The hegemony had picked a fight with something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. We surrender, Vexnoth said quietly. The surrender was broadcast across the galaxy within hours. The message was clear. The hegemony, one of the most powerful military forces in known space, had been completely defeated by humanity in less than a week. But the real message was delivered by Ji-hoon Seo when he addressed the Galactic Council for the final time. Let this serve as a reminder of the galaxy's oldest and most important rule, he said, looking directly at each alien delegate. Humanity is peaceful by choice, not by necessity. We prefer trade to war, diplomacy to destruction, cooperation to conquest. He paused, letting his words sink in. But when someone forces us to fight, we do not fight for honor. We do not fight for glory. We do not fight to prove how brave we are. We fight to win, completely, permanently, and we have been preparing for that fight since the day we first left our home system. The chamber was completely silent. Every alien representative was thinking the same thing. If humans had been preparing for war for 50 years while pretending to be peaceful traders, what else were they capable of? The Kepler 442 system now belongs to the Human Federation, Ji-hoon continued. But more importantly, it serves as a monument, a reminder to every species in this galaxy of why certain rules exist. He looked around the chamber one more time. Do not challenge the humans. This rule was written by those who learned it the hard way. The hegemony has now added their name to that list. I suggest that no one else follow their example. Na Young, Kim, humanity's psychological warfare specialist, had made sure that every species in the galaxy received detailed reports of what had happened to the hegemony. Not just that they had been defeated, but how completely and easily they had been crushed. The reports emphasized that humanity had been holding back for decades, that the peaceful, friendly humans that other races had been trading with were just the surface. Underneath was something far more dangerous. The psychological impact was exactly what humanity wanted. Every alien race now had to wonder, if humans could destroy the hegemony so easily, what could they do to us? The answer, of course, was anything they wanted. But humans did not want conquest or domination. They wanted peace and prosperity. The demonstration of their true capabilities was designed to ensure that peace would last. Years later, alien historians would study the hegemony war as a perfect example of strategic planning and overwhelming force. But at the time, most aliens just called it terrifying. The Kepler 442 system became humanity's first official territorial expansion beyond their original borders, but its real purpose was as a warning sign, a monument to the consequences of breaking the oldest rule in the galaxy. Some rules exist because they are good ideas. Some rules exist because they prevent chaos. And some rules exist because they are written in the blood of those who forgot them. The galaxy learned this lesson well. It would be 300 years before anyone was foolish enough to challenge humanity again. But that, as they say, is another story. The rule was simple, and now it was carved in stone. Do not challenge the humans. The hegemony had broken that rule. The hegemony no longer existed. The galaxy remembered.